Marfoogle TV going live in 3, 2, 1. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam A.K. Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. Let's get right into it. This is something we talked about from before China really screwed us over. Again, China imports no U.S. soybeans for the second month. Brazil arrivals up 29%. Again, this is something where they went to South America for their soybeans. They're essentially trying to cut out America out of their picture. There was quite a few things that they imported from the U.S., and almost all of them they are trying to get from somebody else. We talked about this in the videos that we did about decoupling and how China was trying to figure out ways to essentially go to all of their allies and even some of our allies that are no longer as close as they used to and get the stuff that they were getting from us. There were a few imports that they were heavily relying on us for, and one of those was soybeans. Now, again, they are going to Brazil and Argentina. In contrast, it says the decline followed China's imposition of high tariffs on U.S. soybeans earlier this year in the depletion of the previously harvested U.S. supplies or old crop beans. China is the world's biggest soybean importer. Could probably guess why. In contrast, arrivals from Brazil last month jumped 28.8% year on year to 7.12 million tons, representing 75% of China's total imports of the oilseed. Customs data showed while shipments from Argentina rose from 15.4% to 1.57 million tons, making up 1/6 of the total. China's overall soybean imports hit 9.48 metric tons in October, a record for the month. Now, why this is incredibly important, our soybean farmers in America are absolutely just torn apart. All of the soybean farmers here are all of a sudden going, okay, there's no one buying our soybeans. This is a complete and utter financial hit to our pocket, and it's something that is also a very big sign of decoupling between the U.S. and China. We're going to talk about all sorts of other things going on right now, so stick around. This is going to be a good show, so we'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam A.K. Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. Before we continue, let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex. James, what is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So let's talk about the claim about a plane, and it fell off. Again, a part of the plane fell off. Let's talk about what happened there.
That's what they're saying. So look, here we have another plane incident. At least the government is open, so it's not necessarily the FAA that's the problem, or air traffic control. But look, 2 United airline planes made contact, which actually could be their problem, but made contact in Houston Tuesday night. The company has confirmed. Meanwhile, passengers on board are describing the experience in great detail. The incident occurred on Tuesday when 2 United planes were scheduled to depart from George Bush International Airport in Texas. United Flight 544 was going to Cleveland and scheduled to take off at 6:35. United Flight 2451 was headed to Orlando and was supposed to depart about 10 minutes later, 6:43. But apparently United Flight 544 was preparing to taxi when it made contact with the wing of United Flight 2541, which had stopped just after pushing back from the gate, according to spokespeople. But passengers on the flight tells the media that it felt like we had run over something heavy. It felt like all of us in the back of the plane were like, what was that? And Muck says it seemed as though those things sitting in the back of the plane could feel the impact. She credits a woman sitting behind as the one who brought enough attention to the matter. The lady behind me was like, did you see it? Did you see the piece of the plane that fell off? So now they're suggesting that parts were falling off of the plane. The fellow passenger kept hitting the call button continuously to tell flight attendants she wasn't comfortable until they stopped to check the plane. But according to United, both planes subsequently returned to the gates and deplaned normally. No injuries were reported, obviously. And the Cleveland flight, which had 101 passengers, nor the Orlando flight, which had 73 passengers and 6 crew. So they did arrange new planes for those customers. But did something really fall off? And is that what they ran over, or did they collide? What's going on? It seems like we're getting one story from the passengers and a different story from the company itself.
I would personally get arrested because, if you cause any kind of scene on a plane, you're going to get arrested by some sort of sky marshal. But if I saw something fall off the plane, I would not let that thing take off. I would be, what is that, the movie Final Destination? I would be the crazy one. Be like, I just had a vision. Or I would do whatever it took to get that plane to stop. Now, first of all, I might already do so just looking at this plane. I don't know if you guys noticed this, and this is something I really haven't noticed. I've seen a lot of pictures of planes. Maybe it's the lighting, maybe it's shadows, but do you see how dirty this plane is? And I know that obviously, how good actually, no. I've heard that even washing the plane affects the aerodynamics. Look at the just dirt spots and the stuff that's run off from rain and then you can see the different sections. It almost is like you can see through the paint. It's just dirty as hell. Now, this is a United Express they're showing in the picture, but do you see the scuff marks right by the actual cabin? And it's almost like you can see a chunk. If you've ever seen how they put these things together, they put them together in these humongous cylinder, parts. And it's like you can almost see part of it underneath the paint. I don't know. I just part of their whole pre-flight thing is they also are supposed to wash these things really well. And then that combined with the other day, I saw all of these luggage loaders fist fighting on the ground the other day. There was a video of all of these luggage loaders, right next to a plane and several planes, and they are just getting in a fist fight and pissed off at each other. And you're like, man, what the hell is going on with our airports right now? They've always quoted planes as being the safest way to fly, but when planes do crash, it is an absolute disaster. And a lot of the times it's human error, or it is something that is an engineering flaw or engineering mistake. One of the largest disasters that ever happened was, I actually watched a documentary on, I think it was 523 people died, and surprisingly, it was 4 people ended up surviving somehow. In fact, it would have been a lot more, but they crashed in the mountains. I believe it was in Japan. But this plane crashed, and what it was so simple. So 7 years prior, it had landed, and the back tail end of it hit the ground as it was lining. And it could have even been on takeoff. Either way, when the plane's like this, the tail end scraped the back. Well, there is something that actually separates the pressurized cabin from the tail. And essentially, the engineers went in to fix it. They said that there were gaps. They couldn't put a brand new one and take the whole thing apart, or they chose not to. And they ended up basically putting in a plate in between. Well, that plate ended up wearing out after a while. And what happened to that plane is the whole tail fell off. The top part of the tail fell off, and then that affected the hydraulics lines that went through the entire plane. So not only did the pilot not have a tail to steer or to go up and down, the hydraulics that ended up affecting the systems to turn and to do all of that failed. So he somehow kept it up in the air for 30 minutes, knowing everybody on the plane knowing that they were going to go down and that they were not going to survive. They even did videos to their family. That was what was encouraged. I could only imagine the panic. So it's I haven't flown much since I was a teenager, But after covering all of this stuff and after, hearing about all of this stuff, does it make you less likely to fly? Does it make you more nervous to go visit family during Christmas? It certainly does for me. And I'm kind of glad that my entire family's all here in the Northwest. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you've had a scary flight story, leave it down below. Have you ever had like the craziest, in-air destruction happening, or the whole plane shaking, or storm, or scary instance? Leave it down in the comments. I would love to read your story. And then Dex, Putin's most feared missile downed with a song. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and so apparently Ukraine is using music to bring down the invincible hypersonic missile. So an electronic warfare team is jamming a satellite signal on the Russian weapons and replacing them with a song that parodies Russian propaganda. Nightwatch, the group operating the technology, claims to have brought down 19 Kinzhal missiles described by Putin as invincible in the past 2 weeks. The team told the technology website that it had used a song and a redirection order to knock the next generation missile, which carries a 480 kilogram payload and costs around 7.7 million each, out of the sky. So basically, they're just jamming the signals from the satellites that are navigating them, but they're doing it, I guess, in a light, not a lighthearted way, but in a tongue-in-cheek or funny way back at Russia by using a Russian propaganda song against them. So that's what they're pumping into the satellite.
This sounds, and this is just my opinion, this almost sounds like the guy who single-handedly stayed and tried to protect Snake Island or whatever it was.
Doesn't it?
This sounds like the ghost of Kiev. Do you agree? This sounds like one of their fake like stories to make people be like, yeah, Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally get it. Like they've got a rock god over there with such great, energy in his electric guitar that he's just zapping missiles down out of the sky. Yeah.
Yeah. So who knows what's actually going on here? We don't know. And then before we move on, make sure to go check out EMP Shield. One thing that you can be sure of is there is an awesome device to protect yourself against an EMP strike. Again, if an EMP hits our entire grid and knocks down our country, there's one thing you can be sure of. You can protect yourself, your cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, generators, ham radios, even your Starlink systems, and your home with an EMP Shield. It will protect it against an adversarial backpack attack, or again, a massive event across the country, or a Carrington-level event from the sun. It protects against both. Go to marfooglenews.com/EMP to go check out everything that they have. But again, there is a device that will protect pretty much anything you want to continue running. This is the same company and the same tech that is helping DHS and the Department of War and the FBI and, of course, Air Force. This is not something you can go buy at the store. This is only something you can get through this. And now they have the 25% off sale. It's their largest sale in 4 years, and that stacks on top of the $50 off discount you get with all of our codes. So again, go marfooglenews.com/EMP, code MARF to get $50 off for one, $100 for two, $150 for three, $200 for four, and so on. Plus 25% off for them. I told you guys to wait. This is what you were waiting for. All right, and then Dex, let's talk about U.S. pushing Ukraine to sign a peace deal by Thanksgiving or lose support. So by the time we're eating turkeys, we're supposed to have peace with Ukraine.
Well, Trump likes to wield a stick when it comes to negotiating. And so the White House is pressuring Ukraine to sign on to its new peace proposal by Thanksgiving or lose U.S. support to the country, according to two officials familiar with the talks, speaking on the condition of anonymity to describe the sensitive diplomatic discussion. U.S. Army Secretary Daniel Dryskov presented the Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky on Thursday with a version of the 28-point plan that President Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, recently drafted with Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev. The plan, which had been leaked in the press and confirmed by several officials, included several red lines for Ukraine, including a massive reduction of its army size and ceding the territory to Russia that it has not yet conquered militarily. So although Trump has drawn down direct aid to Ukraine, the U.S. has brokered deals for Ukraine to receive U.S. weapons through the European partners. So, in other words, we quit giving them weapons, but the NATO partners have been allowed to buy them weapons from us. In other words, we're not giving out free donations anymore, but we're happy to sell it. But that can be withdrawn. So the U.S. is now sending signals that everything could be off the table if Kiev does not quickly sign a proposal. The official said, even as Driscoll took a lighter tone on Thursday's meeting. So, again, will this play out? I'm certain the deal sounds like it's in at least in favor of Russia, since Russia is the one negotiating the deal with the U.S. and not Ukraine negotiating the deal with the U.S. So I'm sure they got the points they wanted in there. I highly doubt Zelensky got anything he wanted in there. And I'm sure that we are just going to sort of push him and say, sign the deal. Will he? I don't know. I have a sneaking suspicion a lot of the European partners are going to jump on board and say, no, we're going to support Zelensky because they want to see war with Russia.
Now, is this the first time? I have never seen, in all the years covering Zelensky, I have never seen his wife. Have any of you seen his wife before? This is the first time I've seen him with his wife. I actually didn't know he was married. I guess I just never really thought of it.
Didn't we report her going shopping like in New York?
Oh, I do kind of. Wait a second. Was that when he came and visited the UN or something? And she was...
Yeah, like a long time ago, like right after the war started. Like one of the first things, like he came here and she was buying all sorts of stuff and shopping everywhere.
Yes, I do remember that.
Arms, like we gave all that money to him and they're spending it here.
Yeah, and I want to say some Twitter account said that they saw her spending like $9,000 on a bag or something. Yeah, well... I don't know what happened with that. Let's see here. Ryan says Zelensky, the evil liar actor. Well, Dan, don't. I mean, you're not giving him enough credit. He was a dancer too. And he was a good dancer.
And a piano player, right?
And he's good with leather crafts. Rob Mills, let's see here. Thanks for being here. And we've got Michigan Lifestyle, Randy Man. Someone said she's beautiful. She is beautiful. I'm sure, as far as, I'm surprised she's taller than him, actually. I wonder how tall he is. I've always thought he was kind of pretty small guy. Wild Strawberries, he catfished her, LOL with carrots. Leathercraft, yeah, Funny Doers International. Just go watch his music videos. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And then Itchy Ender, much love. We've got Django Southwest, something like that. Yeah. I'm not going to say that one. And Becky Joelle says she's playing the part. And James says everyone is taller than him. Don't forget him dancing in high heels. I didn't. I said he's good with leathercraft. All right. And then moving on, we have Russia dangling a carrot, $1 billion carrot as payoff to Trump. So you've got Donald with the stick and you have Putin with the carrot. They say, of course, these are some of the clauses part of the surrender document brokered by Donald Trump that Ukraine is facing after almost 4 years of war, buried in the middle of the 28-point peace blueprint being hammered out between the U.S. and Russia. Clause 14 stands out like a flashing sign. It offers up $100 billion in frozen Russian assets repackaged as a fund for reconstruction, with the U.S. pocketing half of the profits. Meanwhile, Russia would be granted around 2/3 of the $300 billion of sovereign assets from Europe. So these are frozen, right? These are assets that they can't get any of right now. But if they do this, not only will they get some of it, they will give some for the reconstruction, which a lot of the time that happens when two countries go to the war. When there's a peace deal, they'll say, we'll help them rebuild. And some might think this is crazy that we're getting part of this money, but I don't, because we put so much money into this war. Our tax-paying dollars were given away to Ukraine as part of national security, as part of a world global security thing. So if they did end up doing this, this would definitely be good for the U.S. I'm sure they're going to frame it that, Donald is going to do this so he can get the money for himself. But, I mean, Dex, wouldn't you think that most of this money, if it did go back to the U.S., it would go into our GDP and back into, I guess, the whole system, right?
Oh yeah, it's not like it's going into his pocket or anything. But look, the president likes to do deals that make money for the country, and whether that's investments from other countries coming into our country, or investments in other countries where it pours profits back into our country, into businesses in our country, that then in turn that money gets funneled inside our country so that it can be turned into other investments and other opportunities, which creates jobs and opportunity for people in America. So that makes total sense. And certainly it is easy to look at this and say, yeah, Russia's dangling $100 billion carrot to Trump on this deal. But, it's almost, you would have expected some sort of negotiation like that to happen. There's got to be a rebuilding and a reconstruction. And, it's not necessarily that Ukraine is going to pay for the rebuilding of all the damage in their country, especially since they're the ones that don't have the money compared to Russia and the West that does.
So this is very important. There's a couple of the things on here as part of this peace deal. 8 U.S. and some other countries, not Ukraine, to recognize Crimea and Donbass as lawfully Russian. So at that point, everybody, including the U.S., would have to say, hey, Donbass and Crimea is officially Russia. It is not a part of Ukraine that was annexed and is still Ukraine. Again, they said that Russia's newly claimed territory would be demilitarized. Ukraine hands Donbass to Russia, says, hey, here you go, in exchange for a rental fee, and no foreign troops would be on the land, and an end to U.S. military assistance. Then Ukraine would negotiate security guarantees from U.S. and Europe to maintain the ceasefire. And then, of course, Kiev would have to slash their military in half, U.S. weapons given up and banned from long-range missiles. And I think that would include the Storm Shadows from UK, and, of course, any Tomahawk in the future that we may or may not give them. So there would be absolutely... you would think, though, something like this, to outsiders, seems like almost a good deal, but at the same time, you see others saying, hey, that's like, what if the U.S. gave up, someplace like New York and said, okay, well, you have it. How I wonder how big is Crimea and Donbass? How big of an area? Because maps are very deceiving. What kind of population center are they actually giving Russia? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below.
The easiest analogy I think that would make sense to Americans is, California. It used to be Mexico, and we fought Mexico and took the land, and it's now part of America. And if Mexico went to war with us to claim that land back, and then, we ended up ceding in a war and letting them keep California, right? That's the equivalent to this, because Russia claims that land as theirs. That's why they fought for it. There's a lot of Russians and Ukrainians that live there on both sides, but that's kind of the same story, right? It was once theirs. Then the lines were drawn, and they don't believe those lines were correct, because if you go back further in history, it was really Russia land. So, Mexico could say the same thing about California. At one point, it was theirs.
Who did we get Hawaii and Alaska from? Do you know right off the top of your head?
Well, we bought Alaska from Russia.
Yeah. Okay. So we bought it. Never mind. I was thinking, because wasn't Alaska part of Russia as well?
At the end of the war.
Hawaii was the Brits, right? Didn't we get that from the Britons? I'm trying to think of where.
I can't remember the deal, but I think it was also a purchase.
Yeah. And then Russia oil risks being struck at sea amid the U.S. sanctions that are happening. They said U.S. sanctions that came into force on Friday are set to leave almost 48 million barrels of Russian crude stranded on the water, pushing dozens of tankers to scramble for alternative destinations in the largest overhaul of the global oil trade. Washington's moves last month to blacklist top producers Rosneft PJSC and Lukoil PJSC is arguably the most aggressive to date under the current administration, as President Donald Trump tries to dial up the pressure on the Kremlin over the war in Ukraine. Now, remember that also pressured Chinese companies to stop doing business with them, and they ended up actually stopping, at least temporarily. As President Donald Trump dials up the pressure, the U.S. Treasury said earlier this week that the measures were already a success given lower demand and discounts on key Russian oil grades. With the restrictions now in effect, Indian refiners are seeking replacement supplies, booking oil tankers for cargoes from the Middle East at a pace that has pushed freight rates for the route to a near 5-year high. Traders, meanwhile, are closely monitoring the ultimate buyers, if any, for Lukoil and Rosneft crude already at sea. Russian export flows are holding up, but it's not finding its way through to their destinations yet. So it makes sense that we're so closely, working with the Middle East as well, because they are definitely going to come up from this. If a lot of places can't end up buying it from Russia, they'll end up swooping over and buying from, other Middle Eastern friends. Dex, did you catch anything in this? I think this is a good thing for
it's a pain
Middle
point
East too.
It's a major pain point for Russia when it comes to their money, and it also, add some credence to the fact that they were selling their gold. Their central banks were literally selling gold off to generate revenue or generate cash. So, maybe they aren't in such a great financial position right now, especially with this. Maybe this is actually starting to work, and hence we have a potential peace deal. Of course, it's very cited at the moment for Russia, but the potential peace deal that they're willing to sign. So maybe all of this is sort of coming together. And by the way, Hawaii wasn't purchased by anybody. We took it over. We overthrew their government, the monarchy. And then in 1950, that was back in 1893. And then in 1959, there was a referendum with 93% of the residents voting to become a state.
Huh. Who did we take it over from? Their local... From the
their
the
local monarchy that was there, the Hawaiian monarchy in 1893. We annexed it as a territory in 1898. We overthrew the monarchy. American style.
Yeah, sounds like they got screwed. I know. When I've talked to Hawaiians, just in general, they're very, very culturally close to their family, but a lot of them were talking about how now there's less and less full Hawaiians that aren't, mixed in with something else now. But like the full-blooded Hawaiians and things, a lot of them, they actually keep to themselves. They don't approve of marriages outside of, Hawaiians. So it's, I guess they said that it was harder to find, somebody to be with because they had to keep it Hawaiian. And then experts issue warning about powerful weather phenomenon that could soon impact the U.S. This looks to be a prolonged event. And I'm not looking forward to any sort of weather event this winter. It is already freezing here. As I told you guys last night, the night before last, I think it was like 34 degrees or something out here in the studio. So I ended up putting on the heater for a minute and I accidentally left it on. So last night's show, I was having like an asthma attack because it's moldy out here, and the combination of mold and then leaving the heater on all night, it was like 90 degrees in here with mold, and it was horrible. But it was actually better than when it is like, negative freaking 8 degrees out here and freezing. But I'm just not, when it's hot in the summer, this shack is going to be just a absolute horror to deal with, and then when it's freezing, it's going to be bad. So here we have such extreme temperatures in the Northwest. We'll have these freezing colds, or when we do have summer, we're not acclimated to it. It just gets super hot. For those of you that have regular weather, it's one thing, but we have had so many weird, just unexpected weather phenomenons here in the Northwest, especially. I can't speak for the rest of the country, but I'm sure you've all had yours as well. says there are signs that something is happening above the Arctic that will have major implications for the weather in the United States soon, as it's referred to the Major Sudden Stratospheric Warning, possibly the earliest event of its kind since 1998. Jonathan Erdman, senior meteorologist at weather.com, said in records dating back to the 1950s, only twice before has a major SSW event happened as soon as November in 1968 and in 1958. And the last time one happened in December was 1998. This could be the earliest such event in 27 years. The predicted warming at the mid-levels of the atmosphere would disturb the polar vortex, eventually allowing temperatures to tumble well below average across the large swath of the country. The polar vortex is an area of low pressure, a wide expanse of swirling cold air that is parked in polar regions. Essentially, that would swoop down and it would sit over the United States in parts for a way longer time. So we're talking about extreme cold. The large upper level low with extremely cold air at its center sits high above the Arctic in the stratosphere, about 10 to 30 miles above the ground. It can be found year-round at the poles, but disruptions to that polar vortex can send chunks of bitterly cold Arctic air spilling towards the U.S. A potential sudden stratospheric warning event would be the source of a disruption, sends a surge of unusually cold air into the central and eastern U.S. by the end of Thanksgiving week, with a cold pattern continuing into the start of December. So we might have a white Christmas, but we also might have a white Thanksgiving and a white week every week in between. They're saying 1998. I don't know if that's the last time. Like, I remember in Seattle in the 90s, late 90s, I thought it was 99, but we had so much snow that it toppled rooftops. I don't know if that was 98, but I do know it was either 98 or 99 or something like that, but that was horrid. So if it's anything like that, I'm not going to be a happy camper. Now, Dex, do you ever have, I know in Georgia it's way different there, and you guys have heat all the time, so much so that you all have ACs. Do you have cold?
4 seasons. Yeah, we have all 4 seasons. We get it all, but we don't typically get heavy snow. We usually get light snow, if anything. But we do get these cold blasts here recently, and we're not designed for extreme cold, and we are designed for extreme heat, but not extreme cold. So yeah, we're not looking forward to it. But it's interesting because it's a warming effect, a sudden stratospheric warming that is causing it to be cold. So interesting way the weather patterns work, but here's your warning, guys.
And for those of you that, obviously in Texas, when they had that big freeze, you had the pipes freeze and burst, and you had all sorts of flooding and all sorts of just horrible events there. You guys know my brother-in-law got stuck in that polar freeze in Texas, and one of the Fugel family members ended up saving him. Ended up driving 2 hours in a 4x4 and picking up my brother because he was stuck at a hotel with no power and no water. So yeah, there's a lot of places that will probably not be ready for this. Just as if we get 110 degree weather, nobody has ACs here, we get totally screwed. If you guys get extreme colds, you're not set up for it.
Yeah, exactly. We all live off of heat pumps, which are good for 32 to maybe 25 degrees, but not 10 degrees. That's when they just struggle to make heat. But look, these types of events, the one thing that you should think about from a prepping standpoint, if you're getting a heads up that there's going to be these massive cold shifts, a lot of times these happen when they happen, if they happen quickly or they're combined with moisture quickly, you get the icing effect. And that's when you start losing power. Whether you have, massive ice storms that take down power lines. The other thing is the longevity. If these things are long, then you run into the power issues like you saw in Texas, where it's a combination of both lines falling, but also, massive requirement for heating from heat pumps, which are running on electricity. And you suck up all the electricity and you start losing it if you don't have electricity. So having backup generators, having the ability to do things like that, having small heaters is a great thing to think about now, not the day the cold shows up when everybody's ran to the store and bought them.
Yeah, Bobby Sue, I guess you're newer than that. You've only been here for a few years, but probably right before you came along. I ended up, it was like a desperate measure. I put out a community post saying that my brother-in-law My sister ended up calling me and saying, hey, Don is basically stuck in Texas, and he was out on a business trip. The hotel that he was at, they froze over. The hotel legally could not keep them there. So they brought everyone in the hotel into the lobby, which I believe they had some sort of generator or something temporarily set up. But they basically said, legally, we cannot have you here. You have to leave. There was no buses. There were no Ubers. There were no anything that anybody could call. There's no taxis because everything was frozen over. So it was like, you can't go anywhere, but you have to go somewhere. So I put a community, my sister said, hey, he's stuck. Maybe somebody in the Fugel fam has a house or, somewhere he can go. And somebody from 2 hours away ended up, and several people, I put a community post saying my brother's stuck. He's in that freeze. Several people responded. I actually talked to probably 5 or 6, and I essentially got to choose which one was the best fit and was the closest. And there was a gentleman who was a bachelor, and he was a business person as well, and I think in the same sort of business that Don was. Ended up picking him up, having him at his house until the planes were going again. And they had a great time. They hung out and even went to the bar together and spent the night at his house. So it was really, really cool. I wouldn't have done that if it was an emergency, but it was absolutely like a lifesaver. Every time I see my brother-in-law, we always talk about it. I mean, it's become, part of our history now. It was really, really cool. But yeah, the Fugel family was there in no time. It was within minutes that 5 or 6 responded. So I will never, ever, ever forget that. All right. And then before we move on, make sure to go check out Inergy. Now, I do want to point out, for the last couple of weeks, there was actually a technical glitch. So if you did go to try to get Inergy, the full discount was there. Apparently, no one ended up having this technical glitch screw them over. But this glitch was not adhering the full discount. You were getting part of it, but you weren't getting the whole thing. And that was something on essentially a technical side. So if you were looking at this, there is a much, much larger discount there, the one that should have been there and was there about 3 weeks ago. So if you haven't checked this, again, this is one of the best solar generators on the market, and there's only a small batch of them open to the public. They stopped selling these to the public for over a year because of their contract with the U.S. Army. This is reinforced with steel. It's under the same specifications that they do for the Army. So that means it's front-loaded in the U.S., meaning that there's not going to be any backdoors in it. There's no chance that somebody could hack it or track it or trace it. Again, this thing is an absolute beast of a solar generator. Go to marfugelnews.com/energy, INERGY, and make sure to use the code Marfoogle. That code will now get you the full and huge discount that it should have been there. Again, we wouldn't have known if somebody wouldn't have let us know. So again, thank you. marfugelnews.com/energy, and make sure to use the code Marfoogle. Again, you get now several $100s off on that. So make sure to go check it out. marfugelnews.com/energy, code Marfoogle. It is modular. You can add batteries. You can subtract batteries. You can add mods to it to end up changing its overall features. It is an absolute awesome, awesome generator. Go to marfugelnews.com/energy, INERGY, and make sure to use the code Marfoogle. All right. And then Army tests out first robotically operated dining facility. We're only going to see more and more of this. And of course, we just come off of a press release by, I believe, Elon Musk talking about how robots are going to make everybody happy and healthy and wealthy in the future. Unfortunately, I'm not in that same boat. The Army is experimenting with an autonomous dining facility in South Korea, and the chow line might never look the same. The 19th Expeditionary Sustainment Command launched the pilot program called Market 19. What an odd name. Within Camp Walker Dining Facility on November 12th. Soldiers and civilians can select menu items on a touchscreen interface, and the system automatically portions, cooks, and plates each meal. The release reads, the robotic cooking system is programmed to make meals using Army recipes. A display shows nutritional information and food choices, including Korean dishes like bibimbap, I have no idea how to say that, kimchi fried rice, and bodaejeje. It says the new automated system will not completely remove humans' oversight. However, our culinary specialists will still handle food safety, ingredient prep, and quality control. So again, they have a full-on robot freaking diner and put into the military facilities. Now, this kind of stuff always goes military first. Any kind of technology that's way above and beyond will always go military, law enforcement, then public. It's weird to see this in like the dining kind of area, but this is the best way for them to test things that they're going to roll out on a big scale. This is a perfect testing facility too for any corporations that are going to roll this out to the public. We're going to see McDonald's that are completely roboticized. And that to me is really sad. Like, I don't understand how they haven't thought ahead. Like, what is this, Elon says that we're all going to be happy and wealthy in the future with robots and it's going to make everybody rich. Who is he really thinking about? Is he thinking about people like you and me? Because between AI and robots, there's not much room for anybody else. Dex, what did you think about this system? It's cool at the same time, but
I'd expect it from South Korea because that's probably some tech from over there would be my guess, which is why it's there. But yeah, it's coming. We've seen this type of stuff rolling out in different fast food restaurants, and I imagine the school lunch ladies will be next, right?
Yep, yeah, especially anything government subsidized. You'll see your lunch line at school with kids being able to talk into an Alexa and say, I would like the square pizza with dots on the bottom that tastes like plastic. And then Alexa will go, sure, absolutely. Here's your plastic GMO food. I don't know. And then Comrade in Arms, awkward moment that Mamdani is asked if Trump's fascist before Dawn says, you can say yes as a bitter feud becomes love in. Dex, you want to go over Mamdani and what happened here?
Yeah, so they met at the White House. So Mamdani came down and drove down, I believe, long drive, to see the president, and it turned into a love fest. At least that's what they portrayed in the presser that they did afterwards. These are two rivals who have basically had nothing but nasty things to say about one another. But the funny line, as you said there, was, one of the reporters said, well, you've called Trump a fascist before. Do you say he's a fascist? And he started to go into like this political explanation, and Trump just grabbed him by the arm and said, just say yes. It's easier that way. They'll shut up. So then they all started laughing. So, which is kind of funny. But anyway, they say they got along in the sense that they both tried to come about their differences from a, what can we do to make New York better point of view. Now, you got two completely opposite ends of the political spectrum here from between Mamdani and Trump. So it'll be it's kind of interesting to think, is there anything they could get along on? But maybe there was, and maybe we'll see. Or will he go home, and then the battle of New York will continue, and will Trump start, threatening to take their funding away and things like that, which he does to other cities when they don't go his way.
Now, this is an interesting font choice. Did he mean for this to look like that you'd put 50 cents in and get your fortune? Zoran for New York City. Doesn't that remind you of those machines? What was that machine called? Gosh, I feel like it was something very, very similar. I mean, he used the same font. That has to be purposeful. It definitely
wasn't it called Zoltar?
Zoltar, yeah, something like that. Zoltar, the fortune teller. They have a machine down at the Pike Place Market. That's what it makes me think of. And then U.S. issues terrifying NOTAM airspace warning as B-52 nuclear bombers conduct an attack demo down in Venezuela. So this NOTAM that went out for this area, and whoops, it looks like we've got a double website here. Dex, I'm going to grab the website from the website. If you want to talk about what happened, and they basically told the area around everywhere, they were saying that, that this alarming warning about the airspace.
So look, the United States had issued a terrifying warning about the airspace around Venezuela, and it coincided with the dispatching of B-52 nuclear bombers that were going in for an attack demo. So the Federal Aviation Administration sent out a NOTAM, or a notice to air missions, at 1:08 p.m., alerting pilots, airlines, and air traffic controllers of a potentially hazardous situation in and around Venezuela. Just hours later, the Air Force announced that last night that B-52, along with KC-135 Stratotankers and fighter jets, conducted a bomber attack demo in the Southern Command Area operations set up to deter illegal drug runners from Venezuela. So the FAA notice warns of worsening security situations and heightened military activity in and around Venezuela. Threats could pose a potential risk to aircraft at all altitudes, including during overflight, the arrival or departure phases of the flight, and at airports and aircraft on the ground, the FAA notice. I mean, that's basically saying any airplane is going to be a threat at this time. So it's a pretty strong NOTAM when you put that out. And then having it coincide with this bomber. And now I'm certain that this, obviously at this point, since no bombs were dropped and nothing kinetic happened, this is probably just a giant flex, or, a big warning to Maduro to say, hey, we're ready. Like, you need to step down. But I don't see that happening. But yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
Or a dry run for something massive, and they're making it absolutely obvious to Maduro that, hey, next step is we're coming in full bore. Like you said, like, this is a big warning. Everybody's sitting on the edge of their seat waiting for what's going to happen in Venezuela. Is the favorable thing going to happen where Maduro just steps down, or CIA takes him out quietly in the dark of night? I'm sure that's not everybody's, awesome scenario, but it would sure be better than going to a full-on war with Venezuela. I'm sure that many of you have family in the military and are not looking forward to your brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters going in to Venezuela to fight in potentially harsh conditions, right? So I guess we will see what ends up happening. And then, again, make sure to go check out Harvest Right during their Black Friday sale. You can get a Harvest Right machine, freeze-dry food, and keep it for up to 25 years on your own at marfooglenews.com/freeze for $1,000 off on certain machines. Again, up to $1,000 off, one of their biggest sales in years, since I believe 3 Black Fridays, and this is actually bigger than that. So again, marfooglenews.com/freeze. Go check out Harvest Right. They are some of the best freeze dryers on the market. Again, you make an investment like this, you will have your needs set. Again, this is an awesome way to freeze dry your own food, select your own dietary needs, and be able to preserve pretty much everything that you have, including gardens. If you have a garden and you throw away a lot of your fruits and veggies, you can freeze dry them and keep them for years and years and years. Again, marfooglenews.com/freeze. Go check them out. It is actually an awesome hobby. Many in the freeze dryer community, they have their own niche on YouTube. So if you want to dip your toes in before you get one, I would highly recommend checking out how to do it, because it is a very, very, very cool group of people as well. All right. And thank you so much to the mods. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much to Kay Parker Frazier being a member for 30 months. Blessings and much love, Foogle family. Well, thank you. And I appreciate everybody in chat. Ryan, WIS Jen, John Doe, RRRBS. Thank you so much. Top fans tonight, Bobby Sue, James, right after that, WIS Jen, 4 at M St. G, Funny Doers International, Jammer1, thank you. Again, MSDND, Shirley Millward, of course, Bailey Joe, Cindy Hu, Becky Benton, and so many more. Thank you so much for being here. Dex, thank you so much for your service tonight. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Much love. Great job, brother.
All right, you guys, have a great night. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro.